Well, they laboured mightily, but they brought forth a mouse. I refer to those whose long campaign to have released the remaining thousands of files that had been suppressed for decades since 1963 on the foul murder, assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The release, when it came, was a disappointment, not least because quite a lot of things were not released. Donald Trump, who was beating his chest just yesterday about how so interesting it was all going to be, then admitted that he, and I quote him, had no choice, unquote, but to suppress thousands of files that haven't yet seen the light of day, may never see the light of day, and those that do will be heavily redacted, lots of black ink. Not that there were no gems to be found in the dung heap that was dumped on people today. There were. Some of them were truly surprising. Who knew that the Cambridge News got 25 minutes notice of the assassination of President Kennedy? Yes, that's right. A senior reporter on the Cambridge News, I don't even know if it still exists, but he was a senior reporter whom MI5 said was known to them and was loyal and true. So no lefty Bolshevik conspirator was he. He got a telephone call anonymously 25 minutes before Jack Kennedy was killed in Dallas, Texas, and told, "Phone up the American embassy. There's about to be big news." Well, how someone knew in England that 25 minutes later there was going to be the biggest news since the assassination of Abraham Lincoln at the theatre, heaven only knows. And if they did know, why they chose to give this scoop to the Cambridge News is beyond all comprehension. But it's certainly curious. And curiouser still that Lee Harvey Oswald had clearly been on the radar of the deep state in the United States for some years, some months, some weeks, and some days previous to the assassination. And there was the tip in amongst the tip of rubbish that was dumped today that actually a police officer called Tippett was the man who actually murdered JFK. We'll never know because he himself was then murdered by Lee Harvey Oswald. Says that he stopped him in the car when he was walking down the road just before he went into a movie theatre, spoke to him, and Oswald put 3 bullets in his head. Although it turns out that there's speculation in the papers that just 2 nights previously, Tippett, the Dallas, Texas police officer, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Rubenstein, who shortened his name to Jack Ruby, who would ultimately gun down Lee Harvey Oswald in the basement of the Dallas police headquarters, they'd all met up for a drink in Jack Ruby's seedy nightclub. Curiouser and curiouser and curiouser. Well, there are a lot of colourful things in the papers. We'll hear from some experts whether there are matters of more substance in the course of the next 3 hours. We'll be talking too about Brexit and in particular about the European Investment Bank. Who knew that we were shareholders worth billions in the EIB? And who knew that the EIB was lending money to us and not for the development of underdeveloped parts of our country? The EIB invested in the extension of the Northern Line on the London Underground. The EIB lent £200 million to Oxford University, the richest institution on the earth next to the Vatican, one of the richest organisations in Britain was lent money by an investment bank whose stated purpose was to develop the underdeveloped parts of the European Union. We'll be talking to an expert on that and taking calls on the whole Brexit business. But first up, it's Catalonia. Will there be blood? If you ask me, it seems now inevitable, and I hope that people think it's worth it. I personally don't. Some people look at a TV screen and see people waving national flags and get all thrilled. Some of the strangest people, actually, people who would never thrill to see a British flag being waved on the streets of Britain. But if it's a pretty flag, and if it's plucky little Catalonia, well, they go all weak at the knees. Let me be absolutely candid. I have no affection, or interest actually, in whether there's 1 Spain, 2 Spains, 3 Spains, or 10 Spains. I have no affection for the Kingdom of Spain, which committed holocausts throughout Latin America in its imperial past. I only care about the workers, you see, and I see nothing positive in the richest part of Spain declaring itself unilaterally independent in order that it can be even richer, in order that it can get rid of the poor parts of Spain that it feels it is unfairly subsidizing. And this kind of nationalism I described on Twitter today as the socialism of fools. People who've given up trying to overthrow the people who actually own and control all of our countries, because it's actually easier to wave a national flag and pretend that you have something in common with right-wing, rich reactionaries who happen to be in the same small corner of an existing state as you. And I say to those, particularly on the left, be careful what you wish for, because there are other separatists in Europe, and some of their flags are not quite so tasty. There's the Northern League in Italy, for example, that believes that Africa begins at Rome and wants to break up Italy and have a northern Italian state. Try that one for size, Mr. Lefty. Try Flemish nationalism for size, Mr. Lefty. They want to break up Belgium because they don't want to share a state with these pesky Catholic Walloons. And then there's Bavaria. Maybe we could have a putsch in a beer hall in Munich. Oh, wait. That's been done before. And there are many, many others that I could adumbrate and will, no doubt, in the course of the next 3 hours. For me, the Spanish government, as I have said from the beginning of this crisis, has done everything wrong that they could possibly have done wrong. Instead of saying, you can have as many referenda as you like, it won't make any difference, because Spain has a constitution which you signed up for in a referendum in the democratic period, and you voted for that constitution to the tune of 91% of Catalans in favour. And what does that constitution say? It says that Spain is indivisible. Indivisible. You signed up for it, the constitution's in place, and therefore you cannot break away from indivisible Spain. Now, actually, it's a bit of a lesson in not having a constitution. It's much more flexible if you don't. But if you do have one, and people insisted on one after Spain's dark fascist decades, well, if you've got a constitution, you can't actually unilaterally break it. So we've now got the irresistible force of the all-class nationalist alliance in Catalonia waving their pretty flags. You've got Barcelona facing a future of playing Girona and Espanyol and nobody else. No Champions League, no membership of the European Union, which they want, no membership of NATO, which they want, no independence. That's the future. Now, when the Spanish government moves its forces into Catalonia, presumably starting right now, what's going to happen? There can only be blood, because even if, and I believe them, the Catalan independence movement intends to take a Gandhian approach of non-violent civil disobedience, the Guardia Civil will not. They are brutes, many of them still imbued with the fascist mentality of their role over Spain's fascist decades. Now, I started out by saying I'm interested only in the workers. The workers in Catalonia have nothing in common with the right-wing, rich Catalans with whom they're standing in the square waving flags right now. They have everything in common with the poor Spanish workers who are just about to get poorer. But flags leave me cold generally.